With that said, we are going to bring in an awesome candidate who was also on Jen's slate with brand new Congress. Her name is Lindsey Boylan. She ran for Congress to represent New York's 10th congressional district.
She'll tell us. I don't know, because I don't even think we've ever met, so that's really cool. But anyway,
not formally.
We're going from bootlicker to changemaker, and so
what a great transition!
I know, it's so great. And so, welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I already know you, Jen. It's this is amazing to be here. Even though we haven't met.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you joined the BNC slate after the summit. Is that what it was? Yeah. Yes. And really that was the only time that I ever met the people that I ever did meet anyway. So that's why we never met. So tell what are you, you must have had like a real motivation for wanting Lindsey to come on right now.
I think that, we've been in obviously conversations about, what's going on right now. And, there's no question that, I look at New York City as the place where there's this sort of this falsehood of whether or not the city is actually progressive. The people in New York City, for the most part, especially in Brooklyn, in Queens, you could talk about Alex's district in, 14. The reality is that most people are progressive. The people who are running the show, they are not progressive.
No.
So that I think in a lot of ways is really the difference. And so would love to hear about, your experience, let the audience know what it was like running for Congress and what it's going to be like now, taking that experience, running to become the Manhattan Borough President.
Yes. Well, can you just put a whole mouth out there. So first, So first, say that what you are running for now, but then, I am curious what your establishment machine was like for you on the local level, and sort of like we can have like war stories, but tell a little bit about like what part of New York you're in and what you're running for now. And
Absolutely. So I'm in Manhattan, in the West. I live in West Chelsea. When I was running for Congress, it's basically the West part of Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, and parts of Brooklyn. And now I'm running for Manhattan Borough President, which covers all of the borough. And in essence is kind of intended to be like the mayor of Manhattan, someone who deals with land use, zoning, community boards, all the local issues that end up being really important in a time like right now, where we're going to need a lot of federal aid, where we're going to need a new direction for the city, where we're going to need to think about how we're going to help people in terms of housing, in terms of socially distanced, being able to keep people outdoors, keep restaurants in business by doing outdoor dining. All that stuff is exactly what I'm going to need to focus on when I get this job. And Jen, this experience of running for office and running for Congress against the machine, which is what we both did. And so for me to want to step right back into it right now, it's because New York City needs so much help. We were hit very badly by shelter in place and COVID, and of course, we needed to, protect as many New Yorkers as we could, but we lost so many people. We lost so much time, and there's so many people struggling. And now we're, in the midst of another increase in numbers. And we have a governor who is unwilling to tax our wealthiest people. We have a governor who's unwilling to help the city of New York and figure out how to do remote learning and figure out how to keep teachers and parents and students safe and still learning. And instead he focuses on what a bad mayor we have. And our mayor is truly ineffective. He pretends to be progressive, but he is also not progressive because he hasn't actually helped people. You can only be progressive if you actually help people.
They like to use the word. They like to say, look, Debbie Wasserman Schultz put out a mailer in our campaign claiming to be the progressive.
No.
She actually used the word progressive. So, at this point, that doesn't mean anything to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I think if you don't know how to fight back a governor who's just going to run circles around you and play the game of politics, even when it hurts our kids and public schools and public school teachers, all at the same time, then you're not a progressive. And I think we're just now beginning to define what it means to be progressive in New York. Of course, we have great leaders who've paved the path on a national stage. Everyone knows who AOC is. I think Manhattan as a whole has been progressive for a long time, but now you have all of these emerging leaders who are unwilling to just kiss the ring and be progressive in name only. And I think that that's what we've had in a lot of leadership for a long time. You know, you kiss the ring and then you can talk about universal health care, but you can just have that bill sit in the state Senate or the state assembly for 40 years and have it not actually do anything. But if you're not finding every possible way to help people who are really struggling in the city, you're not doing the most you can. And I think that's where we are right now, trying to figure out whatever ways we can help people and change the system and deal with something that still has its roots in Tammany Hall, in terms of political corruption and the machine.
So let me ask you this: how do you work in that position in relation to the other mayor? Like, how did those two positions work together? I mean, to me, I'm envisioning sort of like, probably we have individual municipalities that have mayors, and then we also have a county, and the county has technically the mayor. But like, you know, what kind of authority can you get? Like, what can you actually be able to do in that position?
Well, I think in many ways, it's going to be defined anew with this moment in time. So for instance, this past mayor, who will be out of office by the time I win, defined his whole agenda was A Tale of Two Cities. And it was all about housing issues primarily, and how he was going to create and facilitate a whole new generation of affordable housing for New York. And he hasn't done that.
I was going to say, how'd that work out?
No, he hasn't done that. And in fact, he's been tied up in, cases of donors to his campaign, in effect being a lot of developers who end up getting what they want from the landscape in the city. And so I think what this job can be, the borough president, it's all about land use. It's all about weighing in on how we make decisions about what gets built, what we do, what we allow. And for a long time, what we have allowed has been luxury buildings with some gimmies of supposedly affordable housing, which are based on, area media income, which is just, to simplify it, most people, for the vast majority of people who need help, it's not affordable, even the affordable housing that we have created. We've got to have a totally new approach to housing development in the city of New York, just like we need across the country. I mean, you don't have to be in an urban center to know that we have a housing crisis. Some of the most extreme examples in New York as a state, when I was Secretary for Economic Development, were in our rural areas in the southern tier of the state. And you had a housing crisis there as well. And part of that is our federal government got out of the business of building housing and supporting public housing and facilitating, long-term mortgages and building across the country a long time ago. And unfortunately, that coincides exactly with when the government stopped helping was really only helping primarily white Americans in housing development. I mean, you look at Levittown, you look at all these early developments for housing in this country, and how much the federal government put into its long-term agreement with American citizens to give everyone a home or give people a home. It was really only for white people. It was to build a white middle class. And
we have a lot of similar problems here, by the way. I just want to let you know, I see somebody commenting, how come our state and Florida have so much alike? And I'm hearing you talk about that. And one of the biggest problems we have here are developers buying off commissioners to basically just do whatever they want. And they build things without investing in building the infrastructure. And what we're having here will be major saltwater encroachment into our freshwater. But they keep building high rises and keep building this stuff. Like, where is the water going to come from? How are these people, how is that going to work?
Well, and connect it to, our progressive values that I know we share around the climate crisis. talk about water. I'm originally from Southern California. The whole Western seaboard, all of the Western states are drawing from the same sources of water, and it's running out. I mean, anywhere you look across the country, the environmental issues we have are right on top of the inequality and the housing issues that we have. And it's the same everywhere, to the point of the person who weighed in. I mean, and we don't have a serious group of people who are confronting that. And I think we're both probably pretty concerned about, I mean, look, I felt like I'm part of the group of progressives that very much felt we needed to get Trump out of office. So I did everything I could to support Biden.
I succumbed as well, and it ended up to be a lost cause in Florida anyway. So,
Yeah, I know. But, I'm concerned that it's not being taken seriously by enough by this administration based on who they're appointing thus far. And I think a lot of people are frustrated, right?
Yeah. Look, at a minimum, and this is what I said, at a minimum, Biden will get us back into the Paris climate agreement, which was the least we could do anyway. So, I mean, let's be very clear about that. There's nothing like earth-shattering and fabulous about that at all. But that is the bare minimum. I mean, what we have, here, which is a massive problem, obviously, is potential drilling offshore and people that want to drill in our Everglades, overdevelopment. They're ripping out our natural habitats. They're supposed to be investing in rebuilding them, but they don't. I mean, and this is all about corruption. I mean, all roads lead to the same place with all of it, because we know we have the capability of handling this. We know we do. We know that we could be doing things differently, and we know why we're not. And so to me, I feel like our main agenda as people that are seeking progress is to just keep exposing the impediments to that progress, both locally and nationally. Because it's a serious problem. There are people that are like, I can name names, and sometimes I do, as to if you want to know why things aren't happening, this is the person. And there are a handful of those people everywhere. And that's what we're dealing with.
I think it is pretty crass when you think about it. I mean, we're dealing with a couple of zoning changes in the city, and it's literally not an overstatement to say that the only way areas get cited for upzoning, increasing density, is because there's someone who has land that will benefit from it. And they are the ones who say, hey, this area of Manhattan should be upzoned so we can build higher, build more, build more significantly. And that is how the development game works. And that, I think it's almost worse when you see all these pieces, how they connect, and it's so divorced from what is actually going to help people, and how all of it works. It's, it needs to change.
It's very frustrating. It's frustrating when you can see the problem and you can even see the solution, but the people just won't let you get there. And we end up fighting our own party, if we want to, the fact that we, and yes, I do support the idea of third parties as well, but I mean, we end up fighting more within our own party than we even have an opportunity to fight against any other opposing force.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think we see that. It took me a long time to see this, so I apologize to my friends in the fight, but
same.
I didn't realize how much hatred fellow Democrats threw at Bernie, and then the inclusiveness of Republicans, on the other hand, who were willing to stick with the GOP throughout all of this hate, and all of this,
they fall in line. They fall in line. Republicans fall in line. And Democrats care more about personality and their touchy feelings, and they don't care about policy. They care about nice platitudes. And so we kind of circle this drain of nothingness, because nobody's doing anything. But now we'll get rid of Trump, so everything will be fine now.
Like the circling of the drain, it sounds like, when you take a shower and there's like hair at the bottom.
That is what I think of when I think of like where we are right now. And we could get rid of Trump, so we're basically wiping the ugly face off of what we've become, because that's all he is. He's just a look in the mirror and people don't like the way it looks. That's all he is. I regrettably voted for Obama 2 times. So I will also admit that I was a little later to the party. And I don't mean the political party, I mean the figurative party. But, you know, this is something that when you know better, you do better. And our job is to create more people that know better. That's all we can really do at this point.
People, I mean, I'm very impressed by, you know, like all the people who work on our campaigns. So many of them, not just young people. I mean, I remember I went to a few kind of very establishment political club meetings in New York, which is a total function of New York City. And there would be a quiet lady in the room. And I had maybe heard her speak 1 or 2 times. And everyone was so aghast that I was challenging the system. So aghast. How could I, you know, challenge Nadler? And I turned to her. Yeah. And I
that's his seat.
Exactly.
So they say, this is what I would get. People would say, I'd be like, oh, I'm running for Congress. Oh, that's great. What seat? 23. That's Debbie's seat. Like that. I would get it like that. And there were a couple times when people said it to me and I laughed at them. It's just so ridiculous.
It's just like it's so counter, you know, that people like, oh, he's protecting our democracy. And, you know, every day you look and you see, well, is this really protecting our democracy, especially if he's never challenged? How does that strengthen what it is we all care about? Like, how does that help at all?
It doesn't. It keeps them all just in their little circle jerk feeding their coffers. That's what it does. It keeps them all nice and safe feeding themselves.
The only thing I could say good about Nadler is that he does have a couple of good spots on his record, but he's basically the East Coast version of Adam Schiff. It's to say they were, you know, performance artists on TV every day, and you know, just saying, "Oh, I'm fighting Trump." I'm like, "What are you doing for your district?"
They don't do anything.
What do you do? And you know, with all due respect to Nadler, but you know, he's another Wasserman Schultz in the standpoint of, you know, Debbie's entering her 30th year in politics in this county, and Nadler's been in there, I think, even longer than that.
Absolutely.
And it gets to the point where,
how dare you?
You know, and this is much more prevalent on the Democratic side than it is on the Republican side.
Yes.
Why that is, I don't know.
No, but you know what else is interesting also in terms of, you notice that when Republicans lose, they don't blame the libertarian.
Yeah.
Notice that? They don't get out there and blame the libertarian.
And they could have easily done that with Jorgensen, especially in Wisconsin. It
actually matters.
Jorgensen, because if you know anything about Wisconsin, Lindsay, that is it's like what Scott Walker has done to that state.
All right, don't go too far off.
All I'm saying is there is a libertarian contingency in that state, and she ended up getting enough votes that the margin would have made
really. I actually didn't know that.
Would have won.
Yeah.
Trump would have won Wisconsin. And you know that if Jorgensen was not in the race.
But that is assuming that all of those voters would have then voted for Trump instead of stayed home, which is what I argue when they hated us for voting for Trump.
And again, even if that's the case, it is your vote. It is not anybody's job to tell you, oh, no, you can't vote for that person.
They don't think it's an entitlement. These people are entitled. And that is the biggest, that's the most disgusting thing to me about all of it. These are entitled people. They don't feel that they have to earn anything. They don't feel like they have to earn your vote. They don't feel like they have to do anything. They're just entitled to sit there.
I think one of the things that I find so terrible about that notion is that it's not just that person. It's like a whole pyramid scheme of people underneath that.
It is.
And they represent whoever is in power. Everyone below their pyramid scheme looks, acts, has the same experiences as that person. So what ends up happening is, you know, the 6 or 7 people that Nadler has mentored are all white men. Just for example, like it's people with the exact same experience or very similar experiences. When they get in the state Senate or the state assembly, or they get in the city council, they do everything to make sure they're not in the wrong line of whatever he's saying and doing. So you end up getting one person, whereas
they're indebted. They're indebted. And that's a big problem. But you see, now imagine if people actually got elected by people and not corporations, then they wouldn't be indebted to anybody for their seat except for their constituents. I tell people it's like this fascinating concept called democracy. It's just crazy. If you actually just answer your constituents.
I know. People are like, what is it like to run? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like being Steve Prefontaine, who's like, he would always run and he would just stay running in the first place because it feels like sucking wind all the time. But I'd rather suck wind my whole life and not owe
any favors.
Not be indebted to someone.
I'd
rather be sucking wind the whole, my whole life. But bibliography sucked wind whole life. And
I would say that running for Congress felt like being on a roller coaster, sitting in the front seat, and the back of the train is on fire, and the goal is to get to the finish line before the fire catches up to the front car. Yeah. Because that's really what it felt like to me.
Yeah, Yes, it was. And then doing it amidst COVID was also this, because you want to be helping so many people. And then at the same time, you want to be making sure that you're hearing people's concerns. And in a time like this or 6 months ago, you're not even seeing the extent of people's pain. And that is so sad and so scary. And it's tough. Like we see these stories, we see kind of the remnants of how much pain people are going through, but we can't even fathom the level of pain and loss that goes into, almost 300,000 people dying even, and how many concentric circles have been affected by that.
So what is it like for you campaigning now with the way COVID is now versus what it was like a few months ago? Do you know, do you still have a good base of support? Do you still have a good campaign situation?
Yeah. So the seat I'm running for now is an open seat. So that means it's a bigger field of people running, and yet it's totally a different experience because I don't have this one person looming over the race, and I'm very much the progressive in the race, no question. And I call them, the three dudes, who are kind of the most, most likely, there are two other women in the race, first-time candidates, but these three guys are all local electeds. Luckily, I got more votes than the two city councilmen in Manhattan. So, what we do is we've built credibility, and now I've been able to hire a team that has done city politics before. I roped in all my brilliant friends to help, and now I have people with the political connections as well in the city to help. People were too afraid because of the DCCC ban before, and it's been, now I think we didn't really know the length of time. Every day, every month, every week was kind of a new experience of what reality was going to look like, and we hoped our government was going to help more than it did, obviously. Now it's almost like a new norm has set in. Like everyone's doing Zooms. They've found StreamYards. They found, we have different ways of connecting. And so there's some sense of normacy, but the need hasn't gone away. So there are ways that I can connect with people and reach them, but it's pretty much all remote, which means I'm wearing a hoodie and my yoga pants and chatting with you, which normally
I'm wearing yoga pants.
Yeah,
yoga pants.
I'm modeling the new
He's
shirt.
modeling our new volunteer
shirt. I'm gonna buy it. I gotta get a shirt. I gotta get one.
They're cute. He wanted to just put the logo on the front of the shirt, and I'm like, no, because it needs to have a design. And so now our logo's on the back, the Gen Core. That's our volunteer group.
I love it.
We're kind of still figuring out what we're gonna do for podcast shirts. I kind of want to use the same design, but do it on a vintage looking baseball tee with purple sleeves. And the design will be, the letters would be purple instead of white, right? So it'd be reverse. That's what I want to do. But then people like my husband who looked at this shirt and goes, what does that have to do with the Beatles or whatever?
For those of you out there that are watching,
honestly,
please embrace women's touch in politics. For the love of God.
It's really good.
Really.
First of all, we bring purple. And,
there you go.
And also we bring really cute little designs with suns and stuff, which I think
it's funny because because we've been a team for a couple of years, and initially I wasn't sure, and it's like, well, it goes against the grain, but then once you you know, I'm open-minded. And then once I saw it, I'm like, no, you know what? That's really good. That really, it does make sense. And purple
I'm purple.
Yeah,
purple's wonderful.
Purple's wonderful. First of all, it's a very royal color. But
yes.
you know what? You know what? My theme song in my head, like when I think of people like us coming in, I hear "Here Comes the Sun." Like I hear that beginning. I hear that intro every time I think about the change and what we're trying to do. And so really, I feel like that's sort of like the theme song. Now, obviously we can't really use that because of all sorts of issues, but that's what I picture. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick it on the shirt then.
It's so funny. You hear that. I hear "Gimme Shelter," Rolling Stones.
Wow. Okay.
I'm like,
are we going to have this Beatles versus Stones like
no.
debate here?
No, but no, you know what? Look, there are motivating moments where I definitely hear more of that hard rock sound, but I'm just talking like this we are going to be the nice, refreshing change that we've all been seeking for so many years. Like that's the goal. Like that's what I'm trying to create my future with that. Like I'm envisioning it.
Absolutely.
We kind of, you know, it's funny. After the campaign had concluded in August, we weren't down. We were like, we really did start something here. Like we really started to build something. And, you know, a lot of other people run for office. They really have to understand that it is not about you. This is a movement to build these relationships, you know, for a lot of these people. Again, like you said, you know, with Nadler and with Wasserman Schultz, you're not running against one person. You're literally running against you're running against a commodity. That just happens to be the person at the top. The person who is overseeing the unions, who is overseeing
it's a whole thing.
The mayoral seats and you know, everything. It's complicated stuff.
It's the how dare you lady in the
well,
audience.
because again,
she's angry because her power is proximity.
Yeah, well, again, you know, it's like Jen and I were talking right before you came on about the Progressive Caucus, and you know, you can complain about a lot of issues that you know exist with the various chapters on the Hill, but the Progressive Caucus in particular is one where people are like, this is not progressive, and of course it's not.
Well, that's just it bothers me that they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, but nobody was really paying attention to this prior to Bernie and Trump running for office. It became a whole new thing where people were looking at this from a different lens that they never saw before because, you know, obviously Trump's a false prophet, but Bernie was definitely the genuine article from the standpoint of, no, I really am going to do things differently. I'm not going to take your dirty money. I'm actually going to run and try to appeal to the people who really need the help. And then once that happened, and once he caught fire, then they didn't really know what to do because they know what he was selling was infinitely more appealing than whatever BS they've been selling.
Working, and I think we're making inroads. So, Lindsey, let me ask you, what can people do if they want to help you? I mean, I'm so used to saying that, but do you need help running for Manhattan Borough President?
I do. I need people.
I wish we had it. Like, we should have graphics.
I'm going to.
No, but make a comment and then put it up on the screen.
Lindsey, what's your website?
Lindsey for New York. Lindsey with an E for New York. And we launched our
FOR.
FOR. That's a thank you. Good qualifier. Lindsey FORNEWYORK. It's weird to actually try and spell things out. .com.
.com.
See, people know the .com. Yes. No, this is great.
So LindseyforNewYork.com.
Yeah. So they go there, they can watch our video, they can donate, they can, when we're doing phone banking, that's really going to start in earnest at the beginning of 2021. We need all the help and all the spreading of the message.
When is it?
So it's the third week. The primary is really what matters in this city because, you know, it's a Democratic city. So it's the third week of June in 2021. So we've got a little bit of time.
Okay.
Well, you know how this goes. It goes pretty quick, you know, and I just felt like got to dive right back in. It's kind of like childbirth. I'm just right back in it before I forget it.
Well, you know, you don't want to lose momentum and you don't want to lose your nerve. And, you know, you go long enough without having children, you start to really appreciate that nice child.
Exactly.
Do you have kids?
I have a 6-year-old. Yes, she's my little boss. That's
it.
Yeah.
Well, just so you know, my kids are about 6 years apart. So I actually made it that far with one too. So, you know.
See, that's probably kind of the trend I'm on is that kind of, you know, everyone has their own space.
Well, you know what? And there's pros and cons to every way you do that. You know, like you know that. Like there's pros and cons, but I could not have done it when my kid was little. The people who have toddlers and then have babies, I think they're nuts. Like I have never for the life of me understood why anybody would purposefully
have them that close.
Well, they do it to get it over with. Plus you're in diapers, shorter time and all that. Like there is a reason for it.
There is.
Yeah, I'd lose my mind.
Yeah, I don't think I could have done it, but it would have been cool because I love this age. 6 is so much fun. I would love to have like several kids around this age where we're out having fun. We're at the park. Yeah.
4 to 9 were the best years for me. And now I've got a 14 and a 20, and so it's
now you're like give them away.
Lindsey, quick question. Have you been able to form because obviously down here in Florida, we're kind of on our own, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But up in New York, there's obviously a lot of, good people that were on, your slate. Yeah. In particular, Jen's very friendly with Lauren Ashcraft
Melanie. There's a whole bunch.
Melanie
very
Dorigo.
Close friends. Very close friends.
That's so nice. I wish I
text each other. Yeah, we text each other. We support each other, and it broadens the circle. I've become friends with, Melanie has a few friends through the kind of women's progressive group that I've become friends with. We went to DC to protest the most recent SCOTUS appointment, Amy Coney Barrett together.
You're not a fan? You're
Come on, you don't want to wear those hoods?
Exactly. No, it's been amazing to have friends like that. And I think, what you mentioned, there is a real progressive movement in the city. People are tired of it. And it's being led a lot by women. And then at the city council level, I'm trying to support as many women as I can because, we're going to be the change agents.
You're going to get all the support from people, and I would definitely be reaching out to Jamal if I were you.
Yes. Well, Jamal, Alex, and look, the showdown's coming. It's going to be Alex's side versus Hakeem Jeffrey's side. And it's just a question of when it happens, because there's New York's sort of like ground zero, no pun intended for that. But what the last thing I want to ask is, and speaking of a group that's very helpful, the Long Island activists were a group that really were helpful to Jen. Robert Buonaspino, who runs that group, he's really awesome. Do you know the Long Island
activist? You probably don't because
I don't.
Talk to Melanie. I will. I know that she got help from them.
Guys
they are committed. They are committed.
I will.
They will work.
Started out as a Bernie group, but then I think they eventually changed. They're called the Long Island Activists, and they're awesome. And they will phone bank and do all sorts of stuff, and they'll host you for meeting. And they hosted me, and they're in Long Island, so they're really great.
That's amazing. I will. I will reach out. I'm sure they're amazing. I'm excited. I mean, they got behind you. They know what they're doing.
I am sure we will have you on again at some point.
We'll definitely look, seriously, because now I feel like I get to sit on the other side of this. Like, if ever you feel like you have something you want to share and you want to come on, just reach out and we'll bring you. I mean,
I would love that. I would love that.
Because I know how hard it is to get people to have you when you want to go on.
Yes, exactly. I would love that.
Beautiful gal at the ball.
Yeah.
And Jordan Chariton is he's a good friend of mine. And so, if I'll be happy to throw in a word. I'm sure Status Quo.
Especially since he lives in New York.
He's in New York, so I'm sure Status Quo would love to have you on as well. So I'll definitely
I would love that.
We'll put it out there as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's amazing.
Lindsey, happy holidays. Thanks for coming on. We'll definitely be in touch.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Well, she's lovely.
She's adorable.
Yep.